are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 104. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Welcome back to the Tricorder Transmissions. Today we are going to be covering the 5th episode of the animated series, More Tribbles, More Troubles. We are your hosts, Jeff Hewlett.
And Craig Cohen.
Craig Cohen, good to be back in the seat with you again.
Yes, it is, and this is an episode that I am really looking forward to talking about.
I think this is going to be a lot of fun to talk through, and I love the fact that David Gerald came back to write this and as a follow-up to the original Trouble with Tribbles episode.
Yeah, and I'm actually kicking myself for never listening to the commentary track that's on this DVD. When I was queuing it up for this recording, I noticed there was a commentary track by David Gerald. You know, David normally has a lot to say, and as people probably remember, we met him a couple years back at the Vegas Star Trek convention, and you know he was pretty impressed with your glamour.
Yes, he was. Yeah, I had my glamour on my shoulder, and we talked to him for a little while. Wasn't he sitting right next to Mark Cushman?
Yeah. And I got a copy of both scripts, the original series script and then the animated series script, and he drew a little Tribble on the scripts. Very
cool. Do you have them in your little Trek museum there at your house out in Vegas?
Somewhere. I still haven't unpacked fully, so.
Oh. All right. Well, later on in the show, before we get into our commentary, I just want to let everybody know that we're going to have a couple of special guests stopping by the studio. Friend of the show, Ian Adams, is going to come on and give his general thoughts on the animated series. It was sparked by a Twitter conversation we were having shortly after the prior episode we put out. And then, of course, our Shore Leave co-host, Heather Barker, is going to come on and share her thoughts since she's a big Tribble fan. And she wanted to come and say her piece. So stay tuned after our commentary for those two segments. And with that, we're going to jump into our commentary section of this episode. So if you don't want to have any spoilers, you haven't seen this episode, you can feel free to tune out now and watch it and then come back or stick around. So this episode first aired on October the 6th of 1973. And it's got started at 5392.4. So, Craig, are you ready to do our commentary?
Oh, yeah, let's go.
All right. So we will start our commentary in 3, 2, 1. All right. Our familiar Starfield again.
Yes. It's, it reminds me of those moments during the original series where we had a very similar openings.
Yeah. Yeah, I still don't ever skip this when I watch these. Nope, I always listen to the music, man.
Yeah.
It's not like watching an episode of Enterprise where you kind of skip, you press the 30-second skip. Good times.
Yeah.
I like the fact that the opening monologue is subtitled.
Yes.
So you can actually read along if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a long intro, too. For such a short show.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's that's really one of the other major ingredients they kept when they adapted this from a regular series into an animated series.
Yeah, look, I'm just looking at the timer now on my DVD player. It just passed a minute, so it's a minute long intro on a 23-ish minute show or 24-minute show. So there we go. More Tribbles, more troubles. See David Gerald's name in print. Yet again. So every time I see a shot of the Enterprise flying by the screen, I always want to hear Scotty singing now. You would think it would be a nice thing to just throw in there every now and then. So we're starting off with a captain's log, which is pretty cool. And we've got 2 robot ships. And these are actually very similar in design. In fact, I think the remastered TOS episode that featured a robot ship actually used that design from the animated series.
You know what? That's why that looked familiar.
Yeah, pretty cool. And I like how they're teasing the fact that there's some kind of unknown new Klingon weapon that we may be seeing here. There's the familiar Klingon ship. Pretty cool. I think this is the first time we've seen the Klingon ship drawn in the animated series.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're again chasing after somebody else.
You know what? I got a mud vibe from this with the the craft that they beam somebody out of before it explodes.
Yep. Yeah, very, very similar. Yeah, that's an interesting looking little ship they have there. I don't know what that's supposed to be. I guess it's just some kind of little cruiser scout ship.
Yeah, it looked like the mustached guy was on the controls there for the attempted beam.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know you're a big fan.
Oh, I'm a huge fan. A huge fan. Hey, wait a minute. Is that a door on the left-hand side of the front of the bridge?
Yeah.
That's weird.
It is.
It's a different bridge design.
Yeah, well, that's really like, a section of the ship, the bridge that we never really saw in the animated, on the original series.
Yeah, not quite. Yeah, that angle didn't get shown very often. That's for sure. It looks like the over the shoulder shots you get of everybody have a door in the background, no matter where you're at on the bridge.
Yeah. Well, didn't the Next Generation sort of create the idea of like what the captain's ante room?
Yeah, he can go in there and
directly off the bridge.
Yeah, he's got like a little ready room or something in there. Yeah.
So they see there's the mustache. I think they're reusing shots though.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah. I love the Klingon ship on the view screen though. That's really neat. Yep, and we got our familiar red alert beacon there. Oh, and here's the new Klingon weapon. And it's very strange. I mean, I like the way that it looks. It's pretty cool the way they draw it. But I don't know if that's one of those effects they may not have been able to completely duplicate in the live show. It probably would have been more like a laser beam that was wide.
Oh yeah, totally. Here it also reminded me of sort of how Aquaman used to talk to the animals.
Oh yeah, that little wave that came out of his head.
Yes.
Oh, great.
I used to take a Slinky when I was a kid, like the plastic version of the Slinkies, and extend it from my forehead and pretend I was Aquaman.
It's awesome. I didn't know you were an Aquaman fan.
I see. That's the funny thing. I really wasn't, but I guess with imagination and a Slinky, there's only so many things you can do.
Yeah, I guess so. Did you notice that when the Enterprise accelerated earlier, they reused the sound from the original series?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
They're reusing shots there for in the transporter because it's the mustache guy and then it's Scotty. Yeah,
they keep flipping them around. There's no continuity.
Yeah, and then we've got this really, I have to say, it's a really terrible Klingon voice from James Doohan.
Yeah, this is infamous. This is one of those infamous voices from the animated series. Look at the way Spock's hanging out in the background there. I love that. You just kind of standing there. Did you pick up a little earlier? They said that the Klingons are violating Federation space.
Oh, right.
I kind of like that little bit of universe expansion there.
Uh-huh.
Kind of talking about Federation space versus other races space. They didn't really talk a lot about that on the original series, but it kind of makes us realize there are boundaries out there in space. And how do you measure those, actually? How would you measure those space boundaries? It's not like you can have a little line there in space or some kind of like a fence.
Yeah, no, I guess it's just like the same way you sort of deal with international waters.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Or airspace,
Hmm.
The Klingon. I really don't know why James didn't go with a lower pitch there.
Yeah, that nasally higher pitched voice just doesn't sound very Klingon. And it's funny because this is the same Klingon from the original show, from the Trouble with Tribbles. So you would think that he would try to model it after that, but
Mhm. Now, do you think that, we haven't really gotten to the reveal yet, aside from the title of the episode, but do you think that this series might have been held in higher regard by more of the fan base or considered, uh, a true part of the continuity if they had done more direct sequel episodes like this one?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And maybe so. Maybe so. 'Cause this is I guess the first direct sequel we've seen. I mean, like Yesteryear, kind of had some ties because it was sort of tied to A City on the Edge of Forever because of the use of the Guardian,
Yeah.
but it wasn't a direct sequel. Like this one, absolutely, without a doubt, is a direct sequel. So I mean, I don't know if it may have been. I don't know what the right word for it is, but the people may have liked it less if it was a series of direct sequels, or it's a kind of a fine line. I think a lot of Trek fans seem to be very fickle about what they like and what they don't like. So I can just see people complaining about it either way.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate the fact that this episode exists, but I could also see, getting really tired of, what had to be nostalgia when this episode came out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sure if I'd have seen it when it was new and I was a fan of the original series back then, I would have been amped about it.
Yeah. So we've got the return of Cyrano Jones. With the voice actor.
Yeah, yep, with the original voice actor. And I wonder, I was there's David Gerald. Did you see him?
Yeah.
That was actually him.
Awesome.
They drew him that in there as kind of like an in joke.
Nice.
He's only there for a couple seconds, but I was questioning when I was watching this the other day. They beamed Cyrano Jones aboard, but wouldn't they be able to detect that they were beaming Tribbles aboard? I mean, did they just beam everything from the inside of that ship that was alive over, regardless of whether or not it was human?
Yeah, that's a really good point. But you'd also think there would have to be safeguards in place.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So now we've got Cyrano Jones with genetically modified Tribbles.
Great hustle.
Yeah, it's awesome hustle. He figured out there was a problem with his original product. And it's funny. And there it is. The reveal of the Glommer. Now, see, here's something that I don't think they could have done on the show. So this is a. Did you notice that the Glommer doesn't get any bigger when it eats the Tribbles? Where does the Tribble actually go?
I think they could have done the Glommer if they didn't actually show it in action.
Yeah, if it was just something you held in your hand or something, like they showed Cyrano Jones holding it.
Yeah, and then you sort of drop it on a pile of Tribbles and then cut away and, to like Kirk's reaction and then cut back and you've got, hey, where'd the Tribbles go?
Yeah, I guess they probably could have pulled that off. Yeah, they could have gotten creative with it. So, I like that they have to re-explain the whole Tribble reproduction thing.
Yeah.
Just in case you hadn't seen the original episode.
Well, yeah, that's the thing about sequels to anything. You always have to sort of have that period where you set things up for the people that weren't there for the original.
That's true. And I love that they bring up that space station K7 where Cyrano is supposed to be there cleaning up all the Tribbles. So it's actually they use the same reference back from the original series episode. I love it. So we find out now. Here's another question for you. So Cyrano Jones. I have actually a couple of questions about Cyrano Jones. So how did Cyrano Jones genetically modify the Tribble? See, I don't think he's a scientist of any kind. I mean, did he find a scientist somewhere and pay them to do it?
I think that's part of his hustle.
Yeah, maybe.
He probably convinced some scientist or somebody with the means to do it. He probably said, hey, you can have a batch of these genetically modified Tribbles to sell for yourself. Either way, I still appreciate that hustle.
That must be a pretty strong hustle. Must be, if he's getting scientists to create these Tribbles for him. And not to mention, I cannot possibly imagine how Cyrano Jones could have violated Klingon space, gotten onto the Klingon planet and manage to steal the Glommer from what I would only imagine to be a very heavily guarded laboratory area or some kind of a compound where they were working on these things. I just can't imagine he just waltzed right in there. You know, some human just walking around the Klingon homeworld. I'm sure they would notice him immediately.
Yeah. And you know what? That's really a great idea for a Star Trek series. And I know we've got the new quote unquote TV series coming next year. And they've already sort of teased it as being new crews and new heroes and new villains and blah, blah, blah. But a great idea for a series would have been all those gap fillers. So you have an episode that's dedicated to Cyrano Jones procuring the Glommer.
That's great. You can just go back and explain all the things.
Yeah, or you have a Mud origin episode, or a Scotty centric episode. That would probably work in the animated medium, because then you could have likenesses that are exact. Assuming you get the proper clearances from whoever owns the likeness. I think that would be badass.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool. Glommer can't handle those big tribbles. So I love the tribble in Kirk's chair.
Yeah.
So here we go. The Klingons are coming back again, and this weapon. I was thinking to myself, this weapon, Spock says it uses a ton of the Klingon ship's power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now they can't do anything else really while they've got you in the stasis beam, right? You're kind of just immobilized, and they're pretty much immobilized too.
Right.
Right. So doesn't that weapon really rely pretty heavily on the Klingon captain's, abilities to, influence or mentally or intimidate the other ship? I mean, if they can't use their weapons or otherwise maneuver around while they've got the other ship held hostage with the weapon, it seems to me that they would have to, either board the ship they've got, in stasis and take it over that way. I mean, they can't really do much else, right?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. It really, it takes a lot of the strength of that weapon away.
It does. So, and I guess the Klingons are pretty intimidating characters. So, I mean, I guess it would probably work in a lot of circumstances, but just not on James T. Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and here we go. We're getting and of course, look how fast the Tribbles grow. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got our photon torpedo moment.
Yep.
It's an interesting looking torpedo as well.
Yeah, it almost looks like they sort of smudged a ship.
Yeah. Now, so I find Spock says they're running away. So I don't know. I don't think that. I don't think the Klingons are done here.
No.
That wouldn't be very Klingon-like. So they've got all of this Quadro Triticale they've beamed aboard from the robot ship. And oh, look at that. You can see a yellow towing beam coming out of the back of the ship. I don't think we've ever really seen anything like that before, have we? I know we knew we had tractor beams, but to see them visualized, and I think we saw the shield visualized on the outside of the Enterprise a minute ago, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that Glommer's trying his best.
He is. Huh. So we've got, again, somehow the Tribbles managed to get a bunch of grain. So the last time they just had them in a storage bin inside the ship and they were transporting them, right? Oh, look how the door on the turbo lift is messed up.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You see, it's kind of off a little bit. I wonder how something like that would happen. And now it's fixed.
I like how all of these Tribbles look like cotton candy. There's no color variation.
Yeah, I think there was a whole big, the whole big thing about that with Hal Sutherland being colorblind, and that's why they were pink instead of the brown that they were supposed to be, and that's why the Klingons' outfits are pink too.
Oh,
because he couldn't actually see that the color was wrong. They surmised that he thought that looked like they were kind of dark gray or something, or a gray color, but in actuality they were pink. So now we find out that Cyrano Jones is being pursued by the Klingons because he ripped them off.
I love how these Tribbles keep trolling Kirk.
It's great. You gotta wonder how they
keep
get
ending up on the chair. Are they falling from the?
Yeah, good question. Nice bridge shot there.
Yeah,
makes the bridge look a lot bigger.
Yes,
actually, but there's really Cyrano Jones just kind of hangs out there in the back. Yeah. And I think, wasn't McCoy just trying to tell Kirk something about the Tribbles that he learned, but he got kind of shut down? He just got dismissed. I like how Kirk orders all non-combatants off the bridge. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We don't really... I don't think we've ever heard that before, have we?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So, here's another question for you, since we're on the topic of Cyrano Jones. Why would Kirk fight to protect a known criminal like Cyrano Jones? I mean, why wouldn't he just immediately warp to the closest star base and drop him off? Why would he keep engaging the Klingons?
I think, as logical as that would be, I think if you look at the overall arc of Kirk's sort of relationship with the Klingons, those interactions were probably incredibly meaningful to Kirk over the course of his career. So I think it's just a chance to really screw with Klingons and outsmart them.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. There's your trolling Tribble again. And on the other hand, if you flip it around, who is Kirk to defy the laws of another alien culture? If Cyrano Jones admittedly ripped them off, why is it up to Kirk to determine whether or not he should be handed over to them? And I mean, wouldn't you think it would be, the Federation's view that, that if you committed a crime on Kronos and the Klingons were after you, you'd have to face trial by the Klingons? I mean,
I guess so, but then you also do you operate under an assumption that his odds of survival, if turned over to the Klingons, are extremely slim? Do you have an obligation to protect their life?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's a pretty, I guess it's a pretty deep issue. It's a pretty deep discussion. Yeah. But I mean, if Cyrano just admitted that he did it, it's not that like there's any question about it. So I don't know. Well, look at the giant Tribble roll by in the background.
I love that joke with the reveal.
Tribbles. So a Klingon genetic construct. I love that. An artificial creature. That's very cool. And they just want the Glommer back. Mm-hmm. Just give us the Glommer back. I wonder if they actually named the Glommer, like gave it a real name, like John or something. Or Patches.
What did you name yours?
I don't have a name. He's just sitting up there right now. He's dangling. His legs are dangling off the shelf. I can see him from here. He's an official part of the Tricorder studio. So it's kind of, he's watching. Actually, I can see his eyes. He's seeing his kinsman on the screen there. So, and I love that. And they're going to give the Glommer back, but they're not going to give Cyrano Jones over. Interesting. So the creature doesn't have the same rights as the criminal Cyrano Jones.
No.
There he is. Goodbye, Glommer. And I love how the Glommer knows how to transport. He's like, okay, I'll just stand here on the pad.
He's like, I've been there, done that.
I'm out. Oh. Good times. So now this is kind of creepy though. This the actual truth behind these Tribbles, these new genetically modified Tribbles, it kind of creeps me out to think about. It's like a million Tribbles inside one big Tribble. How does that even work?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a Tribble hive.
Yeah, it's really strange. I mean, does the host Tribble that is full of the little parasitic Tribbles, does it, where are its internal organs now? It's just full of Tribbles?
Yes.
It's so weird. Oh. Oh, and I love how he's ordering the Glommer to attack, but the Glommer's too scared. That is, I love it. The spinning around, the legs spinning around in like a wheel, that's fantastic. That is such a cartoon thing. That was like a big Looney Tunes type comedy moment there. Oh my goodness. That's kind of freaky though, man. Does that kind of freak you out? Does it bother you that there's a million Tribbles inside one other Tribble? It just seems weird to me. Ugh, I don't know why I have a problem with it.
No, it totally does.
Reminds me of that movie Slither. Remember that?
Yeah, we saw that together, actually.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God, that's so long ago.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh man. So, and somehow McCoy's got the magic shot, right, to make Tribbles into real sterile Tribbles.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess whoever the other scientist was that did the job originally did a pretty crappy job, and he could have just come to McCoy and had McCoy do it.
Yeah. The animator did a good job though of replicating the shot of Kirk.
He certainly did. But you know, that begs the question though. If McCoy could just do that really quick right here, why couldn't he do that in the original episode? Make the Tribbles sterile.
Maybe that had been sort of McCoy's pet project in his free time.
Oh. Well, you know what? You may have a point there, because didn't we see in Into Darkness that McCoy actually has Tribbles on board?
I believe so, yeah.
Because he was injecting the Khan's blood into a Tribble, into the dead Tribble. So he's got dead Tribbles on the ship. So I guess McCoy does have a thing for Tribble. But I guess that brings us to the end of the episode. And I guess time for our essential votes. Craig, you want to go first?
I think this one is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I think it's clearly an essential episode. Well, mainly for a lot of different reasons. And it's a direct sequel to an original series episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's got characters carrying over from the original series, aside from the main crew. We've got the return of an original series writer in David Gerald.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it further deepens the Tribble and the Klingon legacies, if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah, very good points. I agree on every single one of them. I the return of Koloth, the iconic Klingon, and you've got your Cyrano Jones coming back, and I love the fact that, like you mentioned, there's that development of the backstory between the hatred between the Klingons and the Tribbles. So I love that we get a little more expose there, and of course the creation of the Glommer, a new alien creature, which I love. I wish that they had brought the Glommer forward in time and had it on more episodes in the future. It would be kind of cool if every Klingon had a Glommer on its shoulder, in case
totally.
it ran into Tribbles anywhere. But no, I agree. So double essential vote for this one from us. And that about wraps up the commentary. Anything you want to say, Craig, before we wrap up and move on to the next segment?
No, I think we're all good.
All right. Very cool. Well, stay tuned, everybody. Mr. Ian Adams is up next, and stay tuned after that for Heather Barker. Hey, everybody. I'm here with friend of the show, Ian Adams. Ian, how you doing?
Hey, doing pretty good. How about you?
Good. Welcome back to the show. This is your second appearance on the Tricorder Transmissions. Your first was on Shore Leave, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good time.
Yeah. How you been since then? Good?
Yeah, trying to stay busy.
Excellent.
I've been just waiting to ship out, basically.
We're keeping our fingers crossed that you'll be on a boat at sea soon.
Yes.
All right. So you'll have to keep us posted. I wonder if you can make an appearance from the deck while you're out there.
That might be difficult, but I might be able to do from some exotic city somewhere.
Oh, all right. We'll hold you to that one. So for everybody out there listening, Ian is here because we were having a bit of a conversation on Twitter with a couple of our other contributors to the show, including Jim Morehouse and Heather Barker. We were having Adam Drost. We were having a go around about the animated series, and Heather had just watched her first episode, and it generated some conversation. And Ian wanted to come on and talk about some of the thoughts that he had about TAS and some things that we may have missed in our first few commentary episodes. So with that, I will turn the mic over to you, Ian.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, this show, it's one that always has a soft spot in my heart. It's maybe not as serious as any of the other shows, but there was still something different about it, even for other television cartoons that were on at the time. Like, I don't know if you ever watched the Planet of the Apes cartoon that was kind of contemporary to this, but I mean, you think the animation in this show is bad. Like, they had Jeeps in that Planet of the Apes where the wheels, they literally just took, like cut out the wheels and then spun them, for the animation. It was really, really bad. But, there were some things that actually went into a lot of the reason why the animation was so kind of crude, like not necessarily low budget, but like low frames per second. And like the other sorts of things that they do, like how they'd have someone, an extreme close up on their eyes and they would be talking. And then that way, since it's an extreme close up on their eyes, you don't have to animate their mouth. You just give them a couple eyebrow twitches every now and again.
Yeah, no syncing up. Right.
Right.
Yeah, and they reuse assets quite a bit in this too.
Yeah.
So you'll see, you one body gets used a bunch of times with a different head on it and the same running animations over and over again.
That sideways running animation. Yep. I love it. It's so bad, but I love it. So a big reason for that was when NBC executives finally gave the green light to Filmation to go ahead and produce it, they only had 5 months to produce 8 hours of animation. In comparison at the time, like Disney would produce 2 hours of animation in about 2 years.
Yeah.
They were really having to cut corners just to get the thing done. Yeah, so Roddenberry, he really pushed to hold on to creative control and sort of be a counterweight to the studio itself, who really was looking at it as just a kids show. They scheduled it as a Saturday morning cartoon, and Saturday morning cartoons were intended for kids, right? That time slot.
Sure. I always watched Saturday morning cartoons when I was a kid.
And even in 1975, this series won an Emmy. Fun fact, only Trek series to ever win an Emmy. But it was for Best Children's Series. Roddenberry kind of had mixed feelings about that because he was like, yes, we got an Emmy. And on the other hand, it was for Best Children's Series. But some of the things, like he insisted that the show not be played for laughs, wouldn't feature young characters. Like when they were first outlining, how the show would be, who would be in it, and all that sort of thing. Filmation brought a few character sketches that they had done up to Gene Roddenberry, and they even included like a few kids in there.
Yeah, the precursor to Wesley Crusher.
Right. And Roddenberry was like, no kids. And
is that your Roddenberry impression, by the way?
That's my Roddenberry impression.
Excellent.
It's a lot of, there'd be no cute animal sidekicks. And apparently he was also very insistent that the series would not feature the characters singing in a rock and roll band, which now I kind of wish that he hadn't pushed against that, because how great would that have been?
I'm trying to envision that in my head. Who would have been in the entire regular crew?
Yeah, why not?
And Eric's could have played some sort of a special instrument with his third arm.
Exactly.
He'd be the most badass drummer ever.
Yeah. Oh God, he'd be so good. I mean, it would be terrible, but it would be good.
Well, let's see. Now that there's a thing, they could have brought back the Space Hippies and had an actual band, right? That would be awesome. You go.
But I actually dug up a quote from Roddenberry from this time. Here it is. He said, "That was one of the reasons that I wanted creative control. There are enough limitations just being on Saturday morning." And I think by that he means, from the network. Mm-hmm. We have to limit some of the violence we might have had on the evening shows. There will probably be no sex element to talk of either, but it will be Star Trek and not a stereotypical kids cartoon show. So you can see where he was really pushing back. And that's, I think, where you get those sorts of adult themes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like the euthanasia in Yesteryear. And,
yep.
There's a few other, kind of heavy things like that around the series. And I think that really came from Roddenberry just insisting on, yes, we're a Saturday morning cartoon, mm-hmm. but let's see how far we can push it. Another thing to consider, too, is that a big reason that they actually got all of these big-name science fiction writers, like Larry Niven wrote an episode, DC Fontana. Well, she was actually a producer as well on the show, but, some of these sort of big name like David Gerald and who wrote today's episode was because in 1973, there was actually an 8-month writer's strike, a Writers Guild of America strike. So what it meant is that the strike prevented members who were WGA members from writing for TV, but it meant that you could bring in, just like freelance authors. And so that ended in the summer of 1973. But by then, they had to be knee deep in animation by then because they were going to be, going to air in September that year. So, because they only had 5 months to do it. They only had $75,000 per episode, but that was the most expensive animated series at the time. And that was because they just had to hire tons and tons and tons of people to do everything that they did do to be able to get it all done in 5 months. And another interesting kind of bit of trivia is at first Filmation had planned on not having George Takei and Nichelle Nichols
Right.
come back to their roles, but Leonard Nimoy, I don't know if you heard, this came about, well, at least it made the rounds after Leonard passed, about how, when he found out that Nichelle Nichols wasn't getting paid as much as everyone else.
Yep.
He was like, "Ah." He made like Roddenberry do that, I guess. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so, he did a similar sort of thing on the animated series where George Takei and Nichelle Nichols, weren't being asked back. And when Leonard Nimoy found out, he said that, and I quote, "He would not be a party to this if two of the minorities who contributed to making Star Trek what it was when they were on television cannot be incorporated." And so because Star Trek wouldn't have worked without Leonard Nimoy, they were like, oh, okay, fine, we'll do it. And so then that's where they got. And then it ends up, as you noted in the previous episodes, Nichelle Nichols did a whole lot of voices. I think she did like a couple dozen throughout the series.
Yeah, it was a good example of a heavyweight actor pushing his power and doing the right thing with it. It's
Right.
Not something you hear about very often. Usually you hear about them, using their influence to get themselves something. But in Leonard's case, he's always been on the side of other people. So one of the great things about Mr. Nimoy.
Yeah, and I'm sure we all agree there were a lot of great things about him, but that was one of the best things.
Of course. So, interesting. I want to roll back 1 second to something that you said. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Sure.
Something that you said earlier applies very heavily to this episode, that they had to limit the amount of violence in the show because it was going to be on Saturday mornings and potentially aimed at children. So one of the things that was one of David Gerald's an original ideas for this show, for this particular episode, in fact, was that the Tribble predator, the Glommer, was going to be initially bred to eat Tribbles, but would wind up, growing and growing, and then winds up eating crew members who would vanish from the ship.
Yeah.
So they realized that they wouldn't be able to show, alien creatures eating people on a children's show. So they wind up having to rewrite that, and it didn't wind up being in there. But I thought that was kind of cool. That what would the show have been like, you think, if they went that way? I mean, if it was a regular TOS episode, they totally could have done that.
Yeah, and I think it would have been really cool. I don't know if you remember in the early 90s, there was a cartoon series. It was a science fiction series called Exo Squad. That ring any bells?
No, not for me.
Check it out. Track it down if you can, because it was really good. Because it was a Saturday morning cartoon, but it really, in a lot of ways, pushed the boundary on that sort of thing. And, characters died. There was, a huge, all-consuming war between, Earth and Mars. And the second season kind of went to crap, but the first season was just really, really intense. And I think that had those sorts of, rules not been imposed by NBC and, by the television censors and all that sort of thing, I think that it would have been a lot more similar to that show in theme.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look that show up. Maybe we can get are there any episodes maybe on YouTube we could link in the show notes?
I'll have to look, and if there are, I can send them to you.
Okay, excellent. All right. So do you have some other notes about TAS in general that you'd like to share?
Yeah, just a couple quick notes from listening to the previous episodes. One thing that I didn't think that you caught was in Yesteryear, the Spock episode, Shirkar, the city that Spock and Sarek and everyone all lived in, which you could see from the mountains in a couple shots. It was this big circular city.
Yeah.
When they redid a mock time, the remaster,
Sure, yeah.
for the original series, they actually had used that model of Shikar from the animated series as the model for the city of Shikar in that. And so when there's a really long shot that they added for it where they're walking across the bridge when they first get to, beam down to the planet, you can see that big circular city in the background, and that is direct nod to Yesteryear.
Wow. So I guess that supports the Yesteryear as being the only recanonized episode of the animated series, right? Well, that's pretty cool.
Just another thing is you and Craig kept mentioning Mustache Guy.
Yeah, the mustache transporter guy.
So that is actually supposed to be Kyle.
Yeah, Commander Kyle, right?
Right. From the original series in Wrath of Khan, he was on the Reliant, and he didn't have a mustache in the original series, but he did grow a goatee in Wrath of Khan, so, you could kind of see it as a transition. I don't know. But I just wanted to point out, Mustache Guy is Kyle.
Very cool. I wonder if that handlebar mustache, that was kind of a Harry Mudd takeoff, I think. I mean, Harry Mudd always had that funky mustache.
Yeah. And he shows up in this series as well.
He does down the road, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think people who grew up on later Treks really appreciate how popular Harry Mudd was with people who watched the original series. And so that wouldn't surprise me at all if they were like, yeah, we got to get someone with a Harry Mudd mustache. Let's do it.
Well, it sounds like a good idea. I mean, I'd often wondered why, Mudd wasn't carried over into future Trek series. They could have easily worked him in somewhere, similarly the way they worked in Scotty, say, in TNG.
Right.
You could have found him in stasis somewhere. Or...
Yeah. As part of, especially because he was doing the whole thing with the androids, right? Like maybe the androids put him under stasis or something.
Yeah, or maybe they had an android version of him, or he put himself into an android body, copy of himself. That would have been really cool.
That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, let's write that.
All right.
Let's write that. We'll submit it to one of these fan shows, Trek fan shows.
Yeah, or maybe even... I don't know if you know, there's actually a website out there. I think it's called StarTrekAnimated.com. And that might not be it, but they at least have a link to the site on there if it's not. And there's someone that's actually been taking footage from the animated series, occasionally doing their own, new animations, new artwork. And making new Star Trek animated episodes. And I haven't checked them out yet, but I just learned about them today, and I'm like,
wow.
Check those out.
He's filmationing a filmation show.
Right, exactly.
Wow, it's very meta.
Right.
I like that, though. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and why not? And, and I loved that idea that you guys, when you and Craig were talking a couple episodes ago about, wouldn't it be great to sort of, do Star Trek the Reanimated series or whatever you would call it, where you would take the audio tracks but then do all new animation.
Yeah, I don't think that's too far-fetched an idea.
Not really.
To be honest. I mean, with the technology we have today, and it would probably be relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
Because all you do is get the models and, throw them out there, and you can reuse the models over and over and over again. So,
yep.
Each episode.
And you can do it all cel-shaded. And
yeah, I don't see why they couldn't do it. I think that would be really awesome. Maybe down the road sometime when they're looking for more cash,
Yeah.
From Trek fans, maybe they'll say, hey.
Maybe for the 75th anniversary, yeah.
Yeah, it's like they keep re-releasing the Beatles catalog, and we keep rebuying it all. So it's like, they're going to re-release Trek again. All right, I guess I'll get my wallet out.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a good idea. I would love to see that. And if anybody from Paramount or CBS is listening to this, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you got at least 2 sales here.
Right.
At least. If not more. Maybe we can convince Jim Morehouse to buy it.
Ooh, maybe.
I doubt it. So, so what else you got for me?
Well, that was basically all of the sort of generic stuff that I had. The rest of it was just stuff about more trouble, more tribbles.
Oh, all right. Well, we just did our commentary track for that this evening. So very appropriate that you have some notes about that. So why don't you throw me something you have?
Yeah. So, David Gerald, who wrote this, also was the writer of the original Trouble with Tribbles.
Yes.
And this episode was actually, I don't know if you mentioned it in your commentary because I haven't heard it yet, but this episode was actually written as possible episode for the original series' third season.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And it was shot down.
Right.
Because Freiberger did not like the comedy, right,
exactly
of the original Tribbles episode, which is a shame because I think this episode would have been a pretty cool TOS episode. I would have loved to have seen how they created the Glommer.
Yeah. From an interview that I found with him from, God, it was like the 80s or 90s, somewhere around there, Gerald had actually not really cut any of the sort of action from the story. I mean, there were tweaks to it, like, making the Glommer not eat people. But, the story is essentially how he envisioned it, just animated. And so, that I think actually really shows in this episode because it has a more Trek feel, this particular episode, even though there's, lighthearted bits and stuff. It's still got that sort of, the tension with the Klingon ship and everything doesn't feel hammy, I guess. Like the ship is actually in danger. And for a moment, you're like, oh, God, are they actually going to get through this? I don't know.
Yeah, and we're actually got space combat as well.
Right. With the stasis weapon, which was introduced in this. And
never used again.
Right. Never used again in Star Trek. But I don't know if you ever know about... There's an old game from the 70s that they're still going now called Starfleet Battles.
No, that doesn't ring a bell.
So it's an old, war game. It's played on a hex map. You have little cardboard counters that represent the ships. And then you have like a sheet of paper that has an outline of your ship with little boxes for each of the systems and everything, so like there's one box for each phaser, a box for a bridge or more boxes for the bridge, depending on how big the bridge is, that sort of thing. And shields and all this stuff. And the rules are kind of like reading tax code, I'll be honest. But it was one of the earliest things, because I got into Star Trek back in 1986, just months before Star Trek The Next Generation came out. And that was a game that, like, after I'd picked up the old Franz Joseph Technical Manual and Franz Joseph Enterprise Blueprints, which I still have, that were my dad's that he picked up at a con in the 1970s. That game came next. And so the thing is that game was based off of, like, they only got a license. You'll never see any motion picture or beyond in that they only got a license to do the original series and the animated series and to make use of Franz Joseph stuff. And Franz Joseph stuff was also largely based off of the animated series as well. So like you ever watch the original series and the photon torpedoes, for example, come out of the bottom of the saucer. Yep. But if you look at Franz Joseph's blueprints, they're right below the bridge, the photon torpedo launchers. And that actually came because of the animated series. And he got one mistake, which was that, those weren't photon torpedo tubes up there. They were phaser banks. But that's where he got the location from it. Because that was, people didn't even have VCRs back then. Yeah. You just had to catch stuff on TV. And maybe if you were lucky, you got a couple production stills. And the rest of it was just working off of memory. And so it's kind of amazing that he did what he did. But bringing it back, the stasis field generator, was then used as a weapon in Starfleet Battles.
Oh, neat.
And it does exactly what it does in this episode, right? It'll just shut down your power systems. You're just kind of dead in water or dead in space rather, for, a couple turns or however long it is. I don't remember. And that's it. And so it lives on in gaming.
All right. So getting back to more Troubles. What's next on your agenda?
Yeah. Well, one thing that you notice is the Tribbles are pink.
Yes, they are. And I think I know why that is, but I'm not sure if all of the people out there in listener land know. So
yeah, and it's the same reason that the shirts that the Klingons wear are also pink. Mm-hmm. And it's because Hal Sutherland, the director, was colorblind, and so what he saw as light gray was in reality pink, And I guess nobody ever bothered to mention it to him.
Yeah, and they didn't find out about it until it was too late.
Right.
When he
They're
already
like,
had picked the color and they realized that the Tribbles were pink. They
right.
were supposed to be brown, I believe.
And you know, and the Klingons, you know, of course, in the original series, they wore those gold tunics, not pink ones.
Mm-hmm.
So he was probably imagining like a light gray to sort of represent, you know, some kind of steel or other metal. But no, they're pink now.
Yeah. Oh, that was one of the charming things about the original series. And I think David Gerald, there was an interview with David where he said that he thought that was absolutely hysterical.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of the best comedy moments in all of the animated series, is the fact that the Tribbles were pink.
I love it.
Yeah. So I actually have a pink Tribble here.
Do you really?
In my office. Yeah.
Did you dye it or did it come that way?
No, it came that way.
Oh, wow.
It came with my Glommer.
Oh, you've got a Glommer.
I do have a Glommer, and it's hanging out here. Its legs are dangling off of a shelf up high on the wall. He's
awesome.
He was at STLV with me last year.
Oh,
and
I must have missed it.
He may be making an appearance again this year. He was actually in a picture with Garrett Wong. Came up and took a picture of me with the Glommer. So fun story. But the Glommer will be coming back with me. I have a fascination with the Glommer. I love when they make these new creatures. The animated series has a couple of them.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go too much into the future, but there's some really cool ones coming up. But I really love the fact that they kept pushing the envelope and doing things in TAS that were difficult or very, very costly to do.
Right.
With props and with with puppets, but they could easily pull them off as an animation. I thought that the Glommer was one of them. So
yeah, like building a Glommer would have been way more difficult than just drawing one.
Especially if they went with the original vicious growing Glommer that ate people. I mean, what would a giant Glommer look like? I mean, they probably wouldn't be able to show it. They just have like a pole or something that makes it looks like a Glommer leg, and it comes out and pulls somebody, through a doorway or something. So you think like, oh my God, the Glommer is huge.
Right.
But if the Glommer was really that big though, how would it get around the ship? I mean, it couldn't fit in the air ducts once it got that big. But I guess we don't really know much about the Glommer other than that it eats Tribbles and somehow doesn't seem to change shape at all when it consumes an entire Tribble. Like it just stays the shape that it is. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Like when it tries to eat that giant one.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that it doesn't get gigantic itself. I mean, the original concept of the ever-growing Glommer, I think, makes a little more sense. But
yeah, and the Glommer is really interesting because earlier in the episode, Spock makes a comment about. Or no, I'm thinking about The Trouble with Tribbles. Spock makes a comment about how, you take the Tribble out of their natural environment where they've got predators, and of course their, hyperactive breeding is then going to just get out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this episode, you have the Klingons developing a predator, which makes you wonder, well, why didn't they then just go to the Tribble homeworld and get a predator? So that makes me wonder if maybe like the Tribbles just grew so much once they had left, because wouldn't that be a thing? Like your space station is overrun by Tribbles and you're like, oh God, I got to get rid of all these things. So you round them all up, you put them on a freighter and you take them back to your homeworld and you dump them there and you're like, problem solved, and you wipe your hands and you're done. Right. And so what if having that sort of extra amount was just enough that the Tribbles just got out of control on their homeworld, and then the predators kind of got just pushed out.
So if the Tribbles are grain eaters, right? They're not. They're not meat eaters. I wonder what would diminish the predators. You think they would actually thrive? The more Tribbles there were, the better the predators would get. But question about the converse when we're talking about rounding the Tribbles up and taking them away. Don't the Klingons have phasers?
Yeah, they've got disruptors that disintegrate things. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, there's nothing left over. We've seen people and things get vaporized over and over and over again. There's nothing left. There's no waste, no nothing. Just keep shooting them. Just keep and you would have no problem. I mean, of course, it would probably take a while to find and shoot every single one of them, But, every time you see one, shoot it. What's the harm?
Oh, you know what though?
Hmm.
Because it might be that at the time the Klingons didn't know where the Tribble homeworld was, right? Because we know from Deep Space Nine that eventually some dude led an armada and obliterated the Klingon or the Tribble homeworld. But maybe they didn't know it at the time, and so that was why they were like, well, we gotta just create a predator for this thing.
I love the fact that there is such a thing as a Tribble homeworld.
Right.
So to call, let's see, it would be fair to call Earth the human homeworld, right?
Sure.
It would be fair to call Kronos the Klingon homeworld because they're the dominant species. But saying it's a Tribble homeworld, does that mean the Tribbles are the dominant species? Like it's an entire planet of just Tribbles?
Well,
and whatever the predators are? Like the Tribbles build houses and I mean, they have governments and things. I mean,
right.
I'm just wondering, if you call it the Tribble homeworld, that presupposes that the Tribbles are the number one species on that planet, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's just, I think, just pointing to that being where they came from. But yeah. Tribble society.
I wonder what that would be like. They cooing arguments.
Right.
Yeah, that would be pretty.
It's actually a sophisticated communication mechanism.
Yeah. What would a Tribble spaceship look like?
I don't know, but I know what would be on the inside. Lots and lots of grain.
Yeah, and how would they fly it with no opposable appendages?
They just get into the machinery and the sheer weight of that many of them pushes a lever that makes them turn, that sort of thing.
Oh, God, we got to get somebody to make a CG Tribble ship.
Get on that, fans.
That's a great idea. Somebody will do it.
Oh, that would be great.
So what else you got for me?
Well, I just did have one note that I love when Nichelle Nichols, when Uhura pronounces it as robot instead of robot, which is a very common thing back in the 60s and 70s, back when robots were still new. Everyone called them robots. Like you watch old Twilight Zone, everyone calls robot. I kind of wish we would bring that back as the way to pronounce robot. Because, I mean, how great is that? Robot.
You may cross it up with the sound a frog makes, I guess.
Rivet.
Yeah. But no, I do. I like that too. It's like the dialect change almost.
Right. But that actually goes into, that was another interesting thing that this episode did was, unless I'm mistaken, that was the first appearance in the animated series of freighters, but like really any other kind of Starfleet or Federation ship. And those robot freighters, they look really weird, but it was another callback to this, is that in the animated series, that design shows up a couple times. It shows up in Charlie X. They made the Antares based off of that design.
Yep.
And then in the Ultimate Computer.
Yep, the ship that gets blown up. Yep. Yeah,
that one is also then based off of this. And so it's another sort of thing where at the time there was nothing, you just had those episodes of the original series and that was it, right? That's why you had people like Franz Joseph sort of kit bashing the Enterprise into scouts and tugs and stuff, because the only other ships that we ever saw were other Constitution class ships. And this was like the first time that you get to see a Starfleet or at least Federation ship that isn't that. And it starts to open the universe a little bit more, the Star Trek universe. And that's something that I really, really love about this show. And I love that idea of, sort of drone ships.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Why couldn't we have them? And what's controlling them? Is it like a lesser version of the M5?
Right. Is it a not so evil one? Yeah. It's basically autopilot, right? That's essentially all it is. And, it's funny, me being a merchant marine, I'm like, yeah, why don't we have automation for this stuff? Put me out of a job. But yeah, like it totally makes sense, for big bulk, stuff like that. Like maybe you'd want to have people if it was something valuable like dilithium or antimatter or something, right?
Yeah, you want some kind of a guard in there.
Yeah, but for just bulk goods that are really common and you're just sending them from one system to another, yeah, just send a robot ship. Makes sense to me.
Well, I guess so, but I guess they would be very, very easy. If you had no escort with them at all, they'd be very, very easy to hijack. So I wonder how easy it is. I mean, there must be some kind of manual controls in there in case someone needs to, drive it into space dock or something, or maintenance. So I wonder how easy it would be just to fly up next to it, beam onto it, and steal it, turn it into manual mode, and just take it.
Probably pretty easy. I mean, because like Kirk in this episode, he even has, I think it was Spock. It was either Spock or Sulu take control of the robot ships so that he can ram the Klingon ship with them, because the stasis field can only, control one ship at a time. I mean, I presume it's sort of like sort of retconning, but I presume that it's the same sort of thing that allowed Kirk to drop the Reliance shields in the Wrath of Khan. You just enter,
your
let's
prefix
be honest,
code.
an easily crackable prefix code.
It was like 6 digits, wasn't it?
Right, yeah. And that was it, yeah. You could have cracked that in 5 seconds.
And I always love how they had a mechanism on the console just for doing that.
Right.
That's all it did. That was just to enter the 6-digit prefix code.
And they all light up one at a time in their pre-designated LED screens, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, presumably that would be the same mechanism that Kirk used in this episode. And so then, as we're talking about, like, that should be pretty easy to crack, really. And so you would think pirates would be doing that all the time.
Oh, absolutely. A 6-digit numeric passcode? That's cakewalk. I mean, they do that now.
Right.
That's why they always tell you a 4-digit passcode is not nearly secure enough.
Right. And yet we all have them on our debit cards.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes me feel safe.
Yeah. Well, they haven't cracked the 6-digit in Star Trek time, so we've got some time. We're safe for now.
Yeah, they were worse at math in Star Trek.
Yeah, the computers weren't powerful enough to brute force hack 6-digit passcodes.
And so another thing that I wonder about, right, is that the trouble with Tribbles, that whole thing got set up basically because of the Organian peace treaty that was imposed on them during, what was that, Errand of Mercy?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the Organians, right, in that episode, they were like, you can do all this stuff, but you can't fight. And so in this episode, you've got Kirk ramming ships or at least trying to ram ships into the Klingons. The Klingons are, firing this stasis weapon at Kirk. Their, weapons are going loose all over the place. So where were the Organians? Had they, I think the common sort of fan interpretation is that the Organians just sort of left, the universe or whatever, but had they done that already? Why were they not preventing this sort of military exchange between the Federation and the Klingon Empire?
Maybe they just forgot.
Yeah.
Like, what are we going to spend the rest of eternity babysitting these two races? If they want to kill each other, let them do it.
Maybe they just got Fallout 4.
Yeah.
Right. They just lost.
They lost interest in anything else.
Right.
They all got addicted to World of Warcraft.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Or maybe Star Trek Online.
Oh, there you go. Okay, fair enough. I skipped over the Star Trek game. Yeah. But no, good observation. That was part of the episodic nature of the original series. And that's why one of the things I really like about More Tribbles, More Troubles is that it was a direct sequel to a TOS episode. It's not vague. There's no vagary here. It was written to be a direct sequel, which I thought is really cool. I mean, we've seen some other throwbacks. Mm-hmm. We've seen a throwback to The Guardian and City on the Edge of Forever, but Yesteryear wasn't a direct sequel to City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah, so not really.
I like the fact that we're revisiting and continuing on with the story. As a Trek fan, as a fan of the original series, it's a nice nod to me that the same writer comes back and pens another one.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that sort of serial nature of Star Trek is something that I've the more serial a series is, the more I like it. And that's why I like a lot of the later series, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, even Voyager a lot, is because they were serial. You had something happened in one episode that would affect the next episode, that would affect the next episode, and on and on and on and on. And you started to see that in the original series. They built on that in the animated series. You started to see more of it in The Next Generation, especially with, say, the Borg stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I like it.
Well, TNG got a little more serial as the seasons went on. I think in the beginning, In the earlier seasons, it was a little more episodic. And
Right.
I think Enterprise had some longer arcs, but wasn't all serial. I mean, you'd have like 2 or 3 episodes in a row.
Yeah, but then you had season 3, which was one big arc for the entire season, and that was sort of a first for Star Trek, where there weren't any real fillers. I mean, you could argue, okay, yeah, North Star is probably a filler, like the cowboy one. The rest of them all tied somehow into the Xindi story, and even in the depths of the Dominion War, say took time off for Worf and Dax's wedding, or stuff like that, stuff that just had nothing to do with the overall arc that was happening. Although I guess you could say that was a continuation of another arc, right? The relationship between Worf and Dax. But that was sort of what Enterprise season 3 really did, in my opinion, was it just made it all about one particular story.
No, and that's I guess a mechanic that we're seeing way, way more of in television today than we saw back in the days of the original series.
Boy, and I hope we see that in the new series, man.
Yeah, well, we haven't done any more speculation since we did our original speculative episode, so I think we're all kind of in a wait and see mode at this point. But I hope there's some Tribbles in it somewhere.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, and I'm telling you, I would love to see a CG Glommer. Why can't we do that?
Yeah.
Bring the sucker back. I want to see a Gorn with a Glommer as a pet. That's what I want.
It just goes around eating Tribbles.
Yeah, why not? Wow, the Gorn goes around beating humans up, and his Glommer eats all of their Tribble pets.
Right.
Yeah, sounds like a great arrangement to me. Yeah. But as long as the Gorn is the actual real Gorn, not that, the Gorn from Enterprise. Let's not do the CG, Velociraptor Gorn. I want the original Gorn done in CG. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I request. See, I worked a Gorn into the episode. Amazing. So anything else
It's going to be a good day.
Oh, Lord. Gorn puns have begun.
Yeah.
So anything else for me?
No, that was really all I had.
All right.
And in fact, I've had this episode playing, and it just ended.
Oh. Well, Ian, thank you very much for stopping by the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. And thanks for bringing your agenda with you. It's been very interesting, and hopefully the audience out there has learned a little bit, just like I have. So you'll be coming back to the show sometime soon?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, fantastic. Well, that is Mr. Ian Adams, and we will be jumping to another segment with my Shore Leave co-host, Heather Barker, here in a few seconds, so stay tuned. As promised, I am here with my Shore Leave co-host once again, Heather Barker. How are you tonight, Heather?
I'm great because we're going to talk about Tribbles.
Ha, yes. We know from our last episode how fond you are of Tribbles, and you were excited to come back for this one.
Yes, Tribbles. Tribbles.
Yes.
So exciting.
Pink ones, nonetheless.
Pink ones. I don't really care that they're pink, but that's cool.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to ask you how you felt about this episode in particular, because I think the Lorelei signal you said was your first episode of the animated series. So how does More Tribbles, More Trouble stack up?
So this one was kind of the opposite of Lorelai's signal for me. I enjoyed it. It is only the second one that I've watched. I intend to go back and watch the other two. Is this the fourth one that we're on?
The fifth.
Is the fourth? This is the fifth. So there were 3 before Lorelei signal then, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I'll get it all together at some point, I promise.
No problem.
I intend to go back and watch those too, but yeah, I still liked it. I'm still loving it because I think that the animated series is fun. I love Star Trek in all of its incarnations, so getting to watch a Trek that's completely new to me is very enjoyable. But we had talked a little bit about whether we think these episodes are made for children or adults. Mm-hmm. And this episode for me was just very whimsical and very not childish, not mm-hmm. childlike, but I could see a child enjoying this episode much more than the Lorelei signal. Lorelei signal seemed to have a lot of food for thought. Mm-hmm. It kept me thinking, and as we know from the last episode, I had so many thoughts running through my mind that I was a little flabbergasted and babbly. And I apologize for that. I will get my Trek enthusiasm under control at some point here. But yeah, I felt this one, it was whimsical, it was fun, but there wasn't a lot of substance to it. It didn't keep me thinking afterwards, if that makes sense.
Ah, yes, that makes sense. So this was definitely played much more for the comedy,
right,
aspect. Well, which is what you would expect for a direct sequel to The Trouble with Tribbles, right?
Yes, they're all just such fun episodes, and obviously some of my favorite episodes. So I definitely picked up on the humor. There was a lot of humor that made me giggle, and it was fun. But I don't have a lot. I'm not going to get flabbergasted talking about this episode like I did Lorelei Signal, because for me it was just kind of like a fun, what do they call it? Popcorn movie when you go just see one of those, and it's just, it's cute and enjoyable, and that's kind of that.
So did you enjoy the fact that it's a direct sequel to The Trouble with Tribbles? Did you feel the connection and the continuing story? Did it work for you?
I did. It did work for me, and I had high hopes of actually going back and watching all of the Tribble episodes to see how they interacted. But once again, all the cute dogs that I take care of got in the way of those plans. So yeah, I thought it was fun seeing the characters again. Every time that I see Cyrano Jones, I just want to say he's Cyrano de Bergerac, which makes no sense, except for my little English roots back there. But yeah, I thought it was neat, and it was the same actor that did the voice, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so I thought that was really cool that he came back to do that. I know we talk a lot about our core actors coming and doing the various voices, and so it was definitely fun to have someone return to do their character. It definitely added a little bit to the episode for me.
Yep, I totally agree, and I like the fact that James Doohan didn't have to do double duty and do the voice of Cyrano Jones
or sing us a song.
Yeah, well, I'm getting kind of nostalgic for that Scottish brogue, that song. I would love to him to do a little one. Every now and then it would be nice to harken back.
Yeah, if it was just integrated into the episode a little better, then definitely more enjoyable. It was fun. I love seeing our actors' talent showcased. And this seems to be the place that they like to do that. So definitely cool.
Yeah, well, I would have thought Shatner would have had a chance to do a little singing. He had an album that was kind of spoken word, of course.
Yeah.
But I think that was a missed opportunity. Shatner could have done some tunes on the animated series.
He definitely. I wonder why he didn't. I find that interesting. I mean, maybe I have yet to see the rest of the episodes, so. I mean, for all I know, maybe it's hiding somewhere.
Well, I don't recall it. I've seen them. I don't recall any spoken word Shatner songs in any episodes. But yeah, it's a missed opportunity. So let's see some other stuff that went on in the episode that we might want to pick your brain about. So, as someone who loves Tribbles, what are your thoughts on a Tribble predator?
So the Glommer, I like the name Glommer. It's fun to say, which is silly, and that's just me being silly. I didn't mind that they made a predator. I think it was a good idea. I think that only having one versus so many Tribbles is probably not the smartest thing ever. I think they should have, upped their production on the Glommers there. But I like animals, guys. So the Glommer appealed to me because it was cute. And it was even kind of cute how it ate the Tribble.
Yeah, it kind of sits on them.
Yeah. So, I thought it was neat. I loved when Captain Kirk was at the captain's chair and had the Tribble in a chair, and it kept getting bigger every time. That was so funny to me. Sorry, kind of a tangent, but that was just hilarious. So I'm like, wow, you'd have to have a pretty big glommer to eat that one, right?
Yeah, I found it very amusing that the glommer doesn't get any bigger when it eats a tribble.
Yeah, and I don't know, what if the glommer multiplied like tribbles multiplied? Would that be crazy, or would that work?
Now, that's a really good idea. That's something that I think they should have genetically engineered the glommer to split into two every time it ate a tribble.
Yeah, seriously. It was really neat to see them talking about a genetically modified organism, creature with the tribbles. And again, I'm, going away from the glommer there. But I thought that was kind of interesting. That was kind of an adult topic of conversation, especially one that's relevant today, in our genetic modification of food and animals.
Yes.
So that to me was a good point for food for thought, but it didn't really stick with me afterwards. I just thought it was cool that they brought it up. And,
yeah, it wasn't as it definitely qualifies as Trek social commentary, but I don't think it really it didn't have the same gravity as TOS era social commentary did. So Heather, what was your thoughts on the Klingons developing another super weapon, as it were?
Oh, whoop-de-doo. I have an opinion about the Klingons that I share with some friends, and they try to be really badass, and they're just not. The only Klingons that I felt were truly badass and a little bit frightening were the JJ Klingons.
Oh yeah.
Those guys, I was like, holy crap, I do not want to come across them in a dark alley. No way. But Klingons in general, I'm like, okay, guys, again, good luck. Again, they only made one, so they're not that smart in their fabrication of their defense. They wouldn't have any luck should it happen. So that kind of says it all. I mean, really, guys, you're going to defeat an army of tribbles with one glommer? No. No.
A glommer that got stolen.
A glommer that got stolen. Yeah, I mean, good luck. Move on to your next, device of the week and figure it out.
How talented a thief must Cyrano Jones have been to steal a top secret glommer from a Klingon facility? I mean, what is their security like?
Wouldn't it have been nice to have seen that?
Yeah, no, that would have been awesome.
And that's, just something that we miss with these super short, 22-minute episodes. Obviously, they can't get into all that. They can't explain all, the reality of the Optowad and how did that come about and what's going on.
You and that Optowad.
Yeah. So, that's... it would be nice if somebody had picked up done the books, written books about this stuff, so that we could, find out a little more information, because the episodes are definitely leaving me with a lot of, hey, well, how did this happen? And explain this. And, oh, wouldn't that have been cool? That we just don't get. And we don't get it because it's cartoons.
So we need some novelizations of these animated series episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be cool. I would read them. I haven't read. I'm reading a lot of autobiographical books. Why I'm so late to the game and reading some of the stuff is beyond me. But I imagine at some point I might move into some of the novelizations. I know I'm buddies with Dayton Ward. A lot of us are. And I'm sorry I haven't read any of his stuff yet, but I plan to. Mm-hmm. I hear it's very good. And so, having that kind of a whole exploration into the world of the animated series, I think would be cool. It's there. It's there for the taking, basically. So I challenge you writers to step up to the game. Yeah.
Free content.
There's a lot you can do with your imagination there. So I think it would be really fun.
Oh, most definitely. So any other thoughts, anything about this episode that stick out to you?
So I like the humor. I thought the humor, and I'm trying to think of specific jokes, but I can't because I watched it about I think I watched it Monday morning when I was getting my oil changed. I was like, I'm going to get a head start and watch it. And unfortunately, I watched it, too many days ago that I don't remember the specifics of the jokes. But I know they made me laugh. And for a cartoon to make me laugh, that takes something special. So yeah, I mean, overall, I just kind of finished it like, well, the animation definitely wasn't the same, not quality, but let's see. The planet and the Lorelei signal was just so colorful, and it was just really neat to see, and we didn't really get that here because we were just in space.
Yeah, it's a bottle episode, so we were all stuck on the ship the whole time.
Yeah. So they didn't really get to show that off. And so I kind of was like, oh, bummer. But I can't expect every episode to have all this really pretty animation. So yeah, I just was like, oh, well, that was really cute. And it had Tribbles and they were pink. And so now I have to get a pink Tribble at STLV this year to add to my collection. We had the typical pile of Tribbles falling onto Kirk. But seriously, man, the funniest thing was that Tribble that just kept getting bigger, and every time they shot over to the captain's chair, it just kept getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and he kept shooing it off. You have to wonder how the Tribble kept getting back on the chair.
They jump a little, right?
I don't know.
But I don't know that it could jump that big, and then just the solution of, shooting it, and then it turns into a million other little Tribbles. That's what happened, right? I don't.
Yeah, that was probably the most bizarre concept in the entire episode to me, was that the Tribbles don't, they still technically multiply, but they're just kind of all stuck inside one big Tribble. That's kind of gross.
Yeah. And I just, scientifically, it doesn't really work that way. So
No.
Again, we have to remember that we're watching science fiction here. But it was comical. I mean, really, whimsical is the best word that I can match with this episode. And so, overall, I enjoyed it because of that, and because of the humor, and because of the Tribbles.
Of course. So, any final thoughts, Heather, on this episode? Are you looking forward to the next one?
I am. What is the next one?
Next episode is The Survivor. Ooh, this is a good one.
Okay.
This is a good one. I like this one. It's got a weird alien in it.
A weird alien. Is it psychedelic? Because I keep seeing comments that people say that the animated series, the animation is very psychedelic.
I don't get that reference.
Okay. I know someone on Twitter, forgive me because I don't recall who, had posted screenshots back when they were watching an episode. And I remember that specific episode, which I don't know what it was, did look a little trippy, like some neon colors and swirls. But, so far in the 2 episodes I've watched, I definitely don't see anything psychedelic. So we'll see, I guess.
Well, I've watched them all, and I don't recall anything that I would particularly call psychedelic. I mean, there may be some awkward, weird-looking, colorful things, but I wouldn't, it's not like, there's all the lava lamps and tie-dye. I don't think it's psychedelic.
You don't think anyone was on LSD when they were drawing the episode?
I doubt it. I don't think the animation would have been usable.
Yeah.
If they were on LSD. But
well, I'm curious to see. I'm definitely interested in continuing watching, and I do want to go back and watch those other 3, except for the Spock one. Maybe we'll see. We'll
okay.
see.
Well,
yeah.
I won't force you to watch that one.
That's a tough one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Tough one.
You're allowed to skip that one. You get a pass on that.
Okay.
All right.
We will see.
We will. So, Heather, thank you once again for stopping by the show and sharing your thoughts on this. I'm glad this is becoming a regular thing.
Yeah, I'm really excited. As everyone can tell, I'm just super thrilled, and I get really jazzed up and emotional when I talk about Star Trek in any aspect. So my goal is to just be a little bit more coherent in the future.
You're always coherent. All right. Thanks again, Heather. I really appreciate you stopping by, and we'll talk to you next time.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Hi there, thanks again for listening. If you're cruising the galaxy looking for even more Trek talk, why not visit our good friends Bill and Dan over at TrekGeeks.com? They've got a great podcast that covers a wide range of Star Trek topics, so you're sure to find something you'll love. And if you're in the mood for some awesome tunes, then you really need to head over to 5yearmission.net. The guys are writing a song for every episode of the original series, and each one is absolutely brilliant. So that's TrekGeeks.com and 5yearmission.net. Check them out today.